Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I was chatting with my buddy Jake about this subreddit, and he said, "Man, I've got a story that'll fit perfectly." It wasn't his story, but his sister's, and I sat down with him to get all the details. Get ready, it's a good one and a long one. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah's been tinkering with computers since she was a kid, and she knows her stuff. Like most IT folks, she's bounced around from job to job. Her latest employer was a logistics company, and there were 2 IT employees. The company was based in British Columbia, Canada. About 2 years ago, Sarah's employer decided it was time to upgrade their software. They had separate programs for dispatching, inventory, payroll, and finances, and it was a nightmare trying to move information between them. They decided to implement an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, and Sarah recommended one she knew inside out from a previous job. For those who aren't familiar, an ERP system handles everything: purchase orders, sales, inventory, personnel, vendors, customers, the whole shebang. You can run reports to find out which customer bought the most of product XYZ in the last quarter, which salesperson improved their numbers the most, which vendor has the fastest delivery time, or which warehouse worker packed the most orders. Everyone in the company used the ERP system, but it was complex, and they only used the parts relevant to their job. For instance, the receiving clerk would accept a shipment, verify the quantity, confirm receipt, and boom, the inventory stats would be available to the sales team if they needed to check stock levels. The receiver didn't care about pricing or vendor details, they just did their job. Sarah was swamped during the implementation process, but she managed to train most of the employees on their specific aspects. After a few months, things were running fairly smoothly. Sarah still got tickets for tweaks to the software and occasional hardware issues. Then the company decided to expand its reach and started marketing in different time zones. That's when things got messy. Eastern Canada is 3 hours ahead, so if someone sent an email or an order at 8 a.m. their time, it would hit the inbox at 5 a.m. BC time. The Yukon is an hour behind, so an email sent at 5 p.m. Whitehorse time would arrive at 6 p.m. This stretched out the workday, so many staff started coming in early and staying late. Sarah would arrive at 8 a.m. to find people demanding immediate assistance, annoyed that she hadn't responded instantly to requests submitted before her start time. Same deal, late in the day, her phone would ring during dinner with people wanting help right away. The company decided to stagger her and her IT colleagues' shifts. Sarah would start at 6 a.m. and work till 2:30 p.m., and her colleague would start at 10:30 a.m. and work till 7 p.m. Her colleague, Mark, had young kids and refused the shift change. "I can't do those hours," Mark told their boss. "I need to be there for my family in the evenings." The boss, Mr. Thompson, didn't budge. "We need coverage for our expanded hours. It's non-negotiable." Mark stood his ground. "Then I'm afraid I'll have to resign." And just like that, Sarah was the only person left in the IT department. Mr. Thompson assured her, "We'll look to hire a new IT person soon. Don't worry." But they had trouble finding someone who knew the ERP system, and they were offering way below market value salary. Sarah approached Mr. Thompson about a raise. "With Mark gone, I'm handling double the workload. I think it's fair to discuss compensation." "Sorry, Sarah," Mr. Thompson replied, "but there's no room in the budget for a raise right now." Then she asked about overtime pay. Mr. Thompson smugly informed her, "As an IT specialist, you're exempt from overtime laws in BC." Sarah looked it up, and unfortunately he was right. This went on for months, and she started talking to other IT professionals in her network. They told her what companies were offering, and Sarah knew her employer wouldn't find another tech at their rates. Things went downhill from there. Sarah would get chewed out if she missed a call or an email, no matter what time it came in. She had to train new hires on the ERP system, as well as take care of all the hardware issues. She kept asking for better compensation and was repeatedly denied, so she started planning her exit strategy. Now here's where the revenge kicks in. Sarah had access to the entire ERP system. When a user logged in, the time was recorded, and even if they didn't log out, the system would automatically log them out after 15 minutes of inactivity. Everyone in the company was on salary, and many of them were coming in early and staying late. BC labor law states that even salaried workers are entitled to overtime after 40 hours a week, unless they're managers or supervisors. So Sarah dug into the program and ran a report for each employee who wasn't a manager. She went all the way back to when the ERP system was first implemented. Then she reached out to an employment lawyer and got the green light to refer employees to him. Sarah lined up another job, and on her last day, every employee in the company received an email with an Excel sheet showing the hours they had worked beyond 40 hours a week. The subject line read, "You're legally entitled to overtime pay." In the body of the email was the lawyer's contact information. All hell broke loose. Almost every employee authorized the lawyer to negotiate with the company on their behalf, and the company had to shell out a fortune in back pay. As Sarah was packing up her desk, Mr. Thompson stormed in, red-faced and fuming. "What have you done?" he demanded. Sarah calmly replied, "I just made sure everyone got what they're legally entitled to. All you had to do was pay me fairly for the extra work I put in. Instead, you'll be paying almost everyone." Mr. Thompson sputtered, unable to form a coherent response. Sarah picked up her box of belongings and walked out, a satisfied smile on her face. All the company had to do was compensate Sarah fairly for the extra work she put in. Instead, they had to pay almost everyone. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd be dealing with a real-life soap opera, but here I am. It all started when my wife and I bought our dream home, a cozy little place right on the lake. We'd saved for years to afford it, and we were over the moon when we finally moved in last spring. The first few months were bliss. We spent our weekends kayaking, having barbecues by the water, and just soaking in the peaceful atmosphere. That is, until Karen moved in next door. From day one, Karen made it clear she wasn't happy with us being there. She'd glare at us over the fence, complain about every little noise, and even called the cops once because our dog was barking too loudly. He wasn't. But we tried to keep the peace, figuring she'd eventually warm up to us. Boy, were we wrong. One Saturday morning, I was out mowing the lawn when Karen stormed over, looking like she was ready for war. "You need to move your dock," she demanded without so much as a hello. "It's blocking my view of the lake." I was confused. Karen, the dock's been there since before we bought the place. It's not blocking anything." She huffed, crossing her arms. "Well, I want it moved. In fact, I think that whole section of the lakefront should be mine. My property value would increase significantly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she seriously trying to claim part of our land? "Karen, that's not how this works. The property line is clear and the lakefront is part of our lot." "We'll see about that," she sneered before marching back to her house. I shrugged it off as Karen being Karen, but I should have known better. A week later, I came home from work to find two men in suits poking around our yard, especially near the lakefront. "Can I help you?" I called out as I got out of my car. They turned, and one of them stepped forward, flashing a badge. "Good afternoon, sir. We're from the county assessor's office. We're here to reevaluate the property lines in this area." Something felt off. I'd dealt with the assessor's office before, and this wasn't how they operated. "Do you have any paperwork for this assessment?" I asked. They exchanged glances. It should be in the mail," the second guy said unconvincingly. That's when I spotted Karen peeking out from behind her curtains, watching the whole scene unfold. Suddenly, it all clicked. "Let me guess," I said, crossing my arms. "Karen put you up to this, didn't she?" Their faces said it all. The first guy cleared his throat. "Sir, we're just doing our job. If you could cooperate—" "No," I cut him off. "I'm calling the real assessor's office right now, and then I'm calling the police." As soon as I mentioned the police, they bolted. I watched in disbelief as they jumped into a car where Karen was waiting in the driver's seat. They sped off before I could even process what had just happened. I immediately called the police and reported the incident. Then I called a lawyer because I had a feeling this was far from over. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The police investigated and found out that Karen had hired 2 actors to pose as county officials. She'd even forged documents trying to claim part of our lakefront property as hers. It turned out Karen had a history of trying to scam her way into valuable real estate. She'd pulled similar stunts in 2 other states before moving here. The prosecutors were having a field day with her case. Meanwhile, Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She started spreading rumors about us in the neighborhood, claiming we were the ones trying to steal her land. She even got a few gullible neighbors on her side. But karma has a way of catching up to people like Karen. One day, as she was in the middle of a rant to some neighbors about how we were menaces to society, the police showed up with an arrest warrant. I'll never forget the sight of Karen being led away in handcuffs, still yelling about how she was the victim in all this. It was like a scene straight out of one of those TV court shows. The legal process dragged on for months. Karen tried every trick in the book to weasel her way out of trouble. She claimed ignorance, then mental health issues, and even tried to blame her actions on the stress of the pandemic. But the evidence against her was overwhelming. In the end, Karen was found guilty of attempted fraud, forgery, and a host of other charges. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay a hefty fine. Plus, she was banned from purchasing property in our county ever again. As for us, we got a restraining order against Karen and beefed up our home security system. The judge also ruled that Karen had to pay for a new official land survey to be done, which confirmed that yes, the lakefront was indeed part of our property. The whole ordeal was stressful, but it brought our little community closer together. Once the truth came out, our neighbors rallied around us. We even started a neighborhood watch program to prevent anything like this from happening again. Karen's house was seized and sold to pay her legal fees and fines. A lovely retired couple moved in, and they couldn't be more different from Karen. They actually thanked us for dealing with that crazy lady and making the neighborhood a better place. Looking back, it's hard to believe all of this happened over a bit of lakefront property. But I guess some people will go to any lengths to get what they want. As for us, we're just happy to be able to enjoy our home in peace finally. We still have our dock, our view, and our little piece of lakefront paradise. And every time I look out at the water, I can't help but smile, knowing that justice was served and our dream home is safe and sound. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson. Always trust your gut, know your rights, and never underestimate the lengths some people will go to get what they want. But it also showed me the power of community and standing up for what's right. In the end, Karen's greed and entitlement cost her everything, while we gained a stronger sense of home and community. It wasn't the welcome to the neighborhood we expected, but I wouldn't change a thing. Well, maybe except for having to deal with Karen in the first place. The next one is a petty revenge story. Obligatory. Not my story, but a friend of mine gave me permission to share on here. So, my buddy roommate, let's call him John, works as an attendant for a very fancy, expensive golf course. Membership only. The hours are pretty rough and the pay is okay, but he gets to golf for free, so it works for him. Lots of boomers and wealthy folks, though. The other morning, John had gotten to work before the crack of dawn. He's tired, didn't sleep well, but was doing his thing, setting up the range. About an hour or so into his shift, this older gentleman, let's call him Dave, and a couple of his buddies come by in a golf cart. Dave starts telling John that he's doing it wrong, and if he does it this other way, then it should be much easier. John kinda laughs it off, but he's been working there for nearly 2 years, so it's not like he's new at this. Tries to do it the way Dave suggested. It is, in fact, not easier to do it that way. John gets irked because it's 6:30 a.m., and this man is trying to tell him how to do his job. Well, when John gets back to the clubhouse, he checks the sheets to see who is out on the course. It's super early, and there aren't a lot of people out, so it's not hard for him to figure out which one is Dave. John notices that on the sheet, Dave said he wasn't taking a golf cart. It's a little box you check. And thus, he wasn't charged the $40 fee that members pay for a cart. John informs the supervisor and manager, and they make sure it gets charged to his account. It's not much, but it felt good. The next one is a malicious compliance story. About 15 years ago, I used to work in the highly regulated area of inbound mortgage sales in the UK. Our call were monitored for compliance, and multiple failed calls led to action plans being put in place to get you back on track. Well, I had a terrible start to the year and failed 3 calls in a row. The usual follow-up and support didn't happen, and I turned things around and passed the next 4 months of calls with no action plan needed. In month 4, I get called into a meeting to discuss my need for an action plan. I was confused as it had been so long since I had failed a call. I was referred back to the call from the start of the year. I mentioned that I felt that the action plan was unwarranted as I had turned this around myself even without the support, and putting me on an action plan now was definitely closing the stable door after the horse had bolted. I was told that this was non-negotiable. Okay, fair enough. The action plan is drawn up and there is a section for my comments. I state the dates of my failed calls, the record since the last failed calls, and my disappointment that the support was not offered at the time of need. I was told I wasn't allowed to record this on the performance plan. What they didn't realize at the time is how petty I am, so I researched the HR handbook, printed out the sections stating implicitly I was allowed to put any info I wanted, recognizing this in this section. I updated the performance plan to state I had been told I couldn't record my objections, the manager who told me that, and added the HR handbook section for good measure. Well, it turns out we were due for an inspection, and not intervening when there is a record of failed calls was a big issue. My diverting the lack of support back to management would not look good. They would not sign off my plan as it stood, and I would not back down either. The result was I was not allowed to do my job. I was already job searching elsewhere, but I managed to spend 3 months being paid to job search and be available for AdGov tasks. This mostly ended up with me playing Mario Kart in the break room until busy work could be found elsewhere. When I eventually gave my notice, I was immediately put on a month's paid leave to get me out as soon as they could. The next one is an entitled people's story. My mom has 5 kids, and I'm the middle child who is 19. When I was 8, she got a job 3 hours away. She leaves for 4 days usually and comes back for 2. It was my responsibility to clean and watch the 2 younger siblings, and my older siblings basically just had to stay home, so this arrangement was legal. I've always been the black sheep. For example, my older sister got her dream haircut and highlights on her 11th birthday. My little sister is allowed to fix her own hair. I wasn't allowed to have a haircut until I was 15. I had to write 4 pages to convince her to let me since it was way past my waist. And I didn't want a salon. So money wasn't the problem anyway because I raised my siblings. I was never able to do clubs, do sports, go to games, go to dances, get a job, etc. When I applied for college in 2021, my mom said I could only go to community college. I rebelled and chose the university 25 minutes from home since I got a grant that allowed to go for free. My mom tells my younger siblings they don't have to listen to me, clean, or respect me. My little brother is 15 and doesn't even know how to work the washing machine. Every time I cook for them, it's not good enough. Every time I politely ask him to do anything, he calls me an idiot and my mom lets him. I am not allowed to disrespect them, so it's unprovoked. Since they don't respect me at all, I decided I was leaving this August. My mom is still furious. She keeps calling me a selfish narcissist for making her life harder. The icing on the cake, though, she wants me to pay her since I'm moving. Again, I can't have a job until I move out. I've been making money for my dorm by babysitting a family friend's kids and cleaning my aunt's house on the days my mom is home. Anyway, she and I were on our way to Target so I could get some things. When she said she needed my money, I made. I asked why, and she said it's because she raised me. I told her it's her job as a parent, and then she replied by saying she could have gotten rid of me and wanted me to thank her for not getting rid of me. I could not believe it. Since I didn't give her my money, tensions are high. She keeps saying to her friends that I'm making her life bad. Entitled mothers are so difficult. The next one is an entitled parent story. So this happened about 10 years ago when I was 7 or 8 years old. I was a scout back then and part of a group which was, for the most part, filled with friends and people I knew. I was popular because I was social and easygoing. I was friends with everyone and everyone was friends with me and everyone else. But, as always, there was one exception to this. In all honesty, EK was a goddamn dumbass. He would yell, fight, and make others cry. He did what he wanted. Back then, I thought he was in special education and that's why I tried to be friends with him, but nope. Later in life, when we went to the same high school, I learned that he was just dumb. Like I said, that kid was a dumbass, and would always try to get into fights with everyone. People were sick of it, and in time, so was I. I don't remember clearly what the bastard did to deserve a shouting from me. He was probably harassing girls or hitting boys, but I flipped on him. At this time, he didn't take out his knife or begin to cry. Instead, he just stopped shouting and whatever the hell he was doing. For the rest of the day, he just sat at the back of our cabin and stared at me menacingly. Let's skip a week ahead in time. It was the next scout session and things were going well. We were doing something time-consuming, so everyone's attention was on whatever they were doing. EK, of course, wasn't doing anything and instead decided it was better to run around the cabin. The scoutmaster leader tried her best to stop the madness, but that only fueled EK's rampage. While on his rampage, it didn't take long for him to find the door to the log cabin next to the main cabin, and when he did, well, everything hit the fan hard. I was sitting next to the cabin and I could hear everything he did and said clearly, EK. Oh my, he started whispering from the log cabin. EK. Hey Joel, me, come here for a sec. At first I thought, what the hell is he doing now? But I soon became curious. He wouldn't stop whispering and I wanted to know what he had found. So, like the stupid kid I was, I went there. Me. Yeah? What is it? EK. I have something to show you. After a bit of searching, I found him at the back of the cabin. At this time, I thought he was going to apologize for being a dick to everyone, and I was quite ecstatic. I knew this would be a story I would milk the hell out of, something to brag to my friends. I was so intimidating that he apologized to me. Well, I got a story out of it, but not the one I was hoping for. Me. What have you got there, buddy? His back was turned to me, and I didn't see what he was hiding or doing. After I asked him what he was doing, he turned around. EK. Do you see this, Joel? I couldn't see what he had in his hand, but I saw his twisted grin. Me. I can't see it. Could you bring it closer? EK. Sure. And then I saw it. A dull, red-handled knife. EK. Do you see it now, Joel? At this point, I said something like, oh crap, or what the duck, and booked it out of there, with him laughing maniacally behind me. I ran out of the log cabin into the main cabin and tripped. This diverted the leader's attention, who now noticed that EK was gone and that I was on the cabin floor, panicking. Leader, L. What's wrong, Joel? Where's EK? Me. It's EK, that wanker's got a knife. L. What? Me. He's trying to gut me. It took a moment for the leader to realize what was happening, but when she did, she ran into the log cabin, fuming. My friends came closer and asked me what had happened, but before I could answer them, I heard the leader scream at EK. L. What makes you think it's okay to threaten someone with a knife? EK. I wasn't, I was just showing it. L. Well, what makes you think you have any right to hold one without a supervisor? You could have not only hurt yourself, you could have hurt Joel. EK. I swear L. Get out of here. Go outside and wait for your mom to come pick you up. She then came back into the main cabin and told one of the other leaders to look after us. She went outside with EK and waited for his mother to come pick the little devil up. According to what I had heard the leader tell the others after this incident, the mother was furious. A complete and utter EM who tried to tell the leader that I was probably the aggressor and that I was a son of an idiot. At the time, I laughed at this with my friends, but had I known she would come for me the next week, I wouldn't have been laughing. In order for you guys to understand better where my friends and I were when this happened, here is the main cabin. A week after the incident, my friends and I were on top of the bridge in front of the building. We were messing around, doing dumb stuff, playing tag, and things like that when suddenly EM showed up. The conversation went something like this. EM, which one of you is Joel? Me. Here, ma'am. EM, you're the one who bullied my darling. Me. What? I then noticed EK in the back seat, bawling his eyes out. Me. Oh, you're EK's mom, yeah. He tried to slice me with a knife. EM. He would never. She then went on to list some positive things about him, which seemed like bullcrap to me and my friends. He's a gentleman, yet he harassed little girls. He's great at school, yet he couldn't be bothered to pay attention for a single second. That, and he was an F&D student in high school, so. He's got more friends than any of you? Yet he had somehow become an outcast in our scout group. I honestly got bored at her rambling and went back to playing with my friends. Some of them kept shouting at her, others ignored her. One of my friends, a girl I had known since kindergarten, started straight up roasting this 30-year-old woman. I can't remember what she shouted, but I remember EM's reaction. EM. Shut up, you idiot! This isn't any of your business. This didn't stop my friend. In fact, it fueled her rage even more. Knowing what kind of woman her mother was, this didn't surprise me one bit. As time went on, one of the leaders noticed the commotion and came to check what was going on. EM noticed this and got out of there fast. After the leader asked us what had happened and we told him, he went and told the main leader and she was furious. She went and straight up banned EK, a ban which was lifted just 3 years ago in 2016 when EK wanted back into the scout group. My career as a scout had already ended in 2011, so it didn't bother me until I started it again in the autumn of 2016 and had to cope with the dumbass again. But that's a story for another time, folks. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.